for me, it was really surprising that I came in the United States as a mobile engineer, and I was trying to, to jump into the company as a mobile engineer, especially iOS engineer. But I was surprised that at FAANG companies, like they ask me actually server-side system design, and I would like to talk with you about it because for me, I feel it a bit unfair because like the people who work like 5 years as mobile engineers can't compete in system design with the backend engineers in a server-side system design.
Yeah.
But at the vice versa situation, I bet many backend engineers will be just grilled on front end and mobile.
So I actually
design.
also came from a front end background. Actually, my first job out of college at a different company than Amazon. Actually, I did a lot of stuff with AngularJS. Then actually, when I was hired at Amazon, I was primarily just React.js for the first year or two. And then it was kind of like more into the back end, but like, yeah, I definitely came from a front end background as well. And I actually did have a system design interview when I was interviewing at Amazon. I got down level to SD1.
You had backend system design or front end?
It was just full stack system design. They just treated me like a backend engineer.
That's why I think they low level you because they expect you perform as a backend engineer.
I studied for it.
So when the Amazon, so you had an interview at Amazon, right, as a front-end engineer, and they just provide you questions. They give you questions for backend system design, and then you got the offer, but they down level you. Did you take it as a challenge? That's why you dive so deep into system design.
Well, again, going into the whole, like, is it really fair to give system design to front-end engineers? And I actually do think there's at least some fairness to it. There still is like the whole thing of like CDNs, and then there's like, you have WebSockets versus API calls, but then there's also like backend for front-end design versus GraphQL or multiple API calls. I actually have a specific video on my channel on the design for a dashboard. And it specifically is oriented around some bigger trade-offs that you would make on the job as a front-end engineer in terms of, it's more towards full stack than front-end only though. So I do agree there's some unfairness there if you're going specifically for front-end, but I also feel that it is actually a wrong mentality of companies to entirely just have their front-end and back-end engineers interacting like via throwing stuff over a wall. I think that's not good because in order to have the most efficiently working and performing front end, you actually need to be full stack. You need to be able to know about how, because latency is really important. Page load times are crucial. And then in order to make sure those pages are loading fast, you need to be able to make some judgment calls on the back end itself that they would have otherwise not known about.
Yeah, of course, and you can have a dialogue with the backend people, like backend folks, and suggest some better solution from front-end perspective. Yeah, because as you say, like it's crucial to know like API calls and socket communication, because as a front-end engineer, you use them. So for example, if you create some chat like Messenger, you're gonna use socket. You're not gonna use like regular API. And in fact, many people think that like, but regular API call, like just HTTP connection, it's also socket underneath, and that's why you need to understand that if you open connection once from front end, you don't need to open connection again with your server because it's still open.
As long as you're using a WebSocket, you're not using the plain old API calls. But I really feel that there's some obvious things that you know about in the front end that really slow down page load times, like having a whole bunch of API calls. And so there is system design that you're aware of that really affects page performance. And so there's some that makes sense, but you strictly have to be going into a full stack role. And as front end only, it definitely does not make sense to have system design.
Okay, I see. But okay, who do you think have a better let's say understanding and usage of multi-threading system? Front-end people, like mobile, front-end or back-end?
Front-end. So like if doing back-end concurrency properly is rare. So a lot of people are aware that like, hey, if you're going to have a lot of connections for one of those apps like WhatsApp or something, a lot of the times you use Erlang. or Elixir or something, where you're able to do a whole lot of connections at once, and it's optimized for that. And so they're aware of that, but like a lot of the times you have the requests come in, and then you make a whole bunch of API calls. You don't actually parallelize them properly. You usually do one call and then the next and then the next on the back end. And so like if you're doing it properly, you're probably going to be using like akka, the actor model framework in Spring. If you're not doing that, you're not having all those API calls go off at once, and you're using information from one API call into the next, and it's synchronous.
Yeah.
And I don't think they realize that they're doing synchronous API calls like that.
You think they don't realize it?
I don't think they realize it. No. I don't think they realize that they're actually doing these API calls synchronously, and that there's an alternative to kick them off at once.
I mean, it's surprising because
well, it's usually not worth it to make them all asynchronous and happen at once like that, because that adds complexity to your backend, and a lot of the times you don't
to
care
handle failures and stuff. If one failed, and
there's that, but it's just having them all kicked off at once. A lot of finer tuning things for squeezing the most performance out of your system as possible are just not worth it. Otherwise, we'd be writing our backend services in C, right? And so it's a lot more of a human resources and pumping out business value rather than squeezing the most speed out of your backend. But if you really did care about squeezing out the most speed, then you'd make it more concurrent. But on the front end, though, you care more about speed on the front end. It seems like you care a lot more about having all those API calls kicked off at once, and it's easier to do, I feel, in React.js than it is in the back end, where you'd have to do something with akka. And I think front-end engineers are just equipped with better tools for handling concurrency, and there's stuff like type aheads. So, for example, type aheads, I had to work on something that's basically a type ahead myself. Primogen also he got hired by Netflix because he had experience with RxJS, which is one of those things that has really heavy concurrency on the front end. It's a lot more rare, I feel, to see a requirement for experience with akka than to do that kind of stuff. It's more rare to see a requirement for really solid concurrency understanding on the back end than the front end. It's actually even a common front end interview question is that you'll see questions like implementing promise.all or like rate limiting on promises kicking off at once. You get those more frequently in front end positions than back end positions. So I definitely think you have more concurrency understanding as a front end engineer than a back end engineer. It's interesting.
So a front end engineer, they should be more seasoned in concurrency, and on top of that, they also should know all stuff backend people know.
Yes.
So it seems like,
and yet you get a little lower pay, and so it's like if you just change your resume off and start omitting React.js, you're going to be killing it.
So that's actually interesting stuff, because I honestly believe that the easiest way to start software engineering is from front end. Like the easiest one is like web development, then a little bit complicated it's mobile development, because you have storage on your device in comparison with like you have that database.
Well, and then also you're using Java threads probably. Like if you're doing mobile development, you might be working with the Android framework, and so then you're using the clunkier threading service provided through Java than if you're using the promises that you can get on the front end, where it's a lot easier.
I think it's kind of easier, but I think the biggest difference is that people can see result of their work immediately on the screen. So for people who just started it, it's much easier to see, write some code and just not only see the logs as in backend, but also see like some button moved from left corner to the middle. You can click this button for people like visually see how the code works. I think it's much easier to start software engineering. So from this perspective, it's an interesting point that you give me some insight that being a front-end engineer at FAANG companies, like entire one company, it's a lot more complicated, and you need to have like a lot more knowledge in comparison with just
it's more
software.
Rare to get an interview question about concurrency as a back-end engineer than a front-end engineer. And as a front-end engineer, it's like you're going to see promise.all or whatever. While for the back-end, you typically do not see threading questions asked.
Okay, moving to system design. I'm curious, tell the story how you become that good at system design.